Welcome back to another episode of Rob Sports Center, man. If you clicked on this video to get a game recap from the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders, then you are on the right channel. Now, so this was a crazy game, man. This was a really crazy game. I watched this game from beginning to end, and it's so crazy because I was talking to one of my buddies, and as you can see it from the background, I've just come from the high school football scene, Louisiana high school football scene, and we was talking about one of the state championship games where a team turned the ball over 4 times but still won by a blowout. And he was just like, man, how does that happen? And I was like, man, that's a good question. And just to fast forward to a week later, the same thing happens in the NFL game. Granted, it wasn't a blowout, but technically, if you're going based off of, good fundamental football. So this is something I've been up in my game with, watching Belichick on the YouTube channel Coach. He's been, helping me with developing my game even more. And he always talked about in the end that good football games are won off of good fundamentals. And what's an example of that? Blocking, tackling, throwing, catching, kicking. You know what I mean? So when he said, in terms of saying blocking, making sure we're blocking the right guys in pass protection and then run. Tackling, making sure that we're making these tackles in the backfield, open field tackles, and limiting potentially 20-yard runs to or 20-yard catching runs for just 5 yards because we've made that tackle. Throwing, making sure we're making accurate throws, making sure we're putting the ball on the money, we're not turning the ball over, which the Commanders did a few times. So if you're going based off of fundamentals, it was a pretty sloppy game on both teams' parts, but especially on the Commanders' part. So I'm going to break it down in terms of statistics. So we're going to go with total yards. So for total yards, Eagles had 338 yards. Commanders had 368 yards. So it was kind of an even balance overall in terms of that. Now, when we go to passing yards, the Eagles only had 127 passing yards, and the Commanders only had 254. So it was a pretty, uneven load in terms of Commanders. Now, granted, we do have to understand that Jalen Hurts did get injured in the first quarter, so a lot of the stagnancy within the offense and even passing yards could be contributed to that. So then we're going to jump to the rushing yards. Now, once again, it's like a landslide in terms of the Eagles. The Eagles had 211 rushing yards, and Barkley had like 100 yards rushed in the first quarter, and the Commanders only had 114 yards, and most of their rushing yards came from Jayden making plays with his legs. So now we're going to go down to third down efficiencies. The Eagles was on third down 16 times and only converted 3. The Commanders was on third down 13 times and completed 7. Now, fourth down efficiency. Eagles was 3 for 3 on fourth down. The Commanders was 2 for 3, which that wasn't too bad. Granted, the Eagles might have been more than 3 for 3 on fourth downs had Jalen Hurts stayed, because like they say, when you're playing against the Eagles, you know that in a sense, it's almost like every possession you're defending 4 downs. Because if they get to fourth and short, most of the time they're going to tush push, and most of the time that tush push is going to be successful. So we're losing Jalen Hurts early on in the first quarter. You didn't see that this game, you know what I mean? So you got to take that into consideration. We come down to sacks allowed. The Eagles allowed 4 sacks. That comes from Pickett just sitting in the pocket and, being complacent and not moving around. With Jalen Hurts, you might not have got those sacks just because he's so mobile. Same thing with the Commanders. Commanders only gave up 1 sack, but that's what happens when you're dealing with a quarterback who can make plays with their legs. Both had penalties. I mean, Eagles had 10 penalties for 91 yards. Commanders had 6 penalties for 93 yards. Now, granted, most of the Commanders' penalties was against Lattimore, and I would say for sure one of them, and I think it was the play across the middle. That was a for sure pass interference. But on one of the plays, you seen that A.J. Brown was actually holding on to, Lattimore's jersey, and that's what was making Lattimore hold him. And this is coming from a former DB, former wide receiver, man. I think that the rules are so much strongly in favor of the receiver that they have to give DBs some type of leniency. You know what I mean? So I would like to see, especially in games where it's a key deciding factor, I would like to see let those guys battle it out. Now, if it's where the DB is pulling the receiver to where he can't make a play, or if it's to where the receiver is pulling the DB to where he can't make a play, then yeah, by any means, throw that. But if it's kind of a back and forth thing, like with that right there, that should have been a no call. You know what I mean? In my honest opinion. Let me know what y'all think down in the comments. Then we go down to fumbles. The Eagles had 0 fumbles. The Commanders had 3 fumbles. Yeah, they was turning the ball over pretty, efficiently. You know what I mean? So, like I say, going back to fundamental football, based off of all of that, you just wouldn't think that the outcome would have been the outcome in terms of the Commanders pulling this off. So then we go down to the interceptions. Eagles threw 1 interception. Jayden and the Commanders threw 2. We're going to go down to time of possession. And like I said, once again, the Eagles dominated in time of possession, 36 minutes and 12 seconds, and the Commanders had 23 minutes and 42 seconds. So the time of possession was dominated. Obviously that stems from the Eagles in their run game. Now, granted, you can look at the first quarter and a lot of the success that they was having in terms of Barkley running that ball in the first quarter. A lot of it could have been contributed to that. Now, we did know that with Jalen Hurts leaving, it was going to take a toll in the run game as well too, because now we can play you differently. You know what I mean? So now we can drop back now in two-man cover and two-man coverages, like cover 2 or cover 4, because we don't have to take into consideration the quarterback running. Now we can focus on that. You know what I mean? Or we can just drop down into a single high. We can drop back to a single high, and we can stack that box and take away Saquon's but minimize his effectiveness now, because until Pickett can show us that he can hurt us down the field from throwing, then we're not getting out of that. And what was the only way that Pickett was able to hurt the Commanders throwing the ball? Was when they would call penalties on Lattimore, and that's what gave them a lot of their advances. It wasn't like he was just sitting back there being a true technician QB and just making the right reasons, hurting the Commanders. And that a lot of what was hurting Commanders was penalties, was holes. Lattimore had like 3 or 4 different holes on him, and that's what allowed them to even move the ball. You know what I mean? So it's not like Kenny Pickett was just sitting back there dicing them up. They was kind of getting favored in terms of that. But even going back to with Hurts going down, I knew that the outcome potentially would have been different. Now, considering everything that I've read off in terms of the mistakes, I didn't think that they would be victorious based off of that. But I knew one thing, that when the Eagles, when Kenny Pickett came in, and you even seen that with the first interception he threw, I knew that it was going to be a completely different game in terms of the play calling, because of you going from Hurts to Pickett. You know what I mean? It's the reason why the Steelers let him walk after just 4 years with them. It's the reason why they went and got agent Russell Wilson to bring in. And this game shows you that in terms of his his lack thereof of being a prominent quarterback in the NFL. So, but like I say, man, it just was a really crazy game, because if you're looking at this, you just don't think that the outcome would have been an outcome. But I will say one thing too. I will give Jayden Daniels. I want to give the organization as a whole, in terms of Dan Quinn, what he's been able to come over there and do within 1 year, piggybacking off of Ron Rivera. And then, even like I said, going to get Jayden Daniels, bringing him in, and just looking at how they've turned their organization around has been, pretty miraculous. And that's just a testament of, good coaching and good culture. And we know what Dan Quinn can do based off his time in Seattle, based off his time with the Falcons when he took them to the Super Bowl, based off what he done defensively in the Cowboys, and now you're seeing the same thing with the Commanders. I will say one thing too, that I give Jayden Daniels much credit. I know Commander fans, if I talk to any of y'all, or if y'all seen me talking about him, I wasn't too sold on him, just because I thought that he was just a quarterback who was solely reliant on his skills to run the ball, that he didn't really put the time and the effort into, hone his skills as a passer, as a true pocket passer. And I mean, like one of the interceptions he did, it got away from it. He threw it over the receiver's head. It wasn't a bad read, just a bad thrown ball, and that's going to happen. That happens to the best of them. But I'm looking at the level of composure. I didn't see him rattle too much. It's almost like the same demeanor I seen from Joe Burrow that 1 year that they was playing, the year they made it to the Super Bowl, and they was playing the Titans in that playoff game, and he just kept getting sacked and sacked and sacked and sacked. And every time he just got up, brushed himself off, went to the huddle, and it was the next play. It wasn't no throwing fits, getting mad, going off on the refs, or cussing out his offensive lineman, or getting mad at his receivers. He just took it for what it was and just moved forward. So I see a lot of calmness within that with Jayden Daniels. And I mean, that can be just who he is in terms of that, and just coaching, just letting them know that, man, we just going to slowly chip away. You make a mistake, hey, we got another play after that. Just don't get too in your head about it and allow that to take from your game. Now, I will say too, I feel a certain way about this game just because they didn't beat the starting quarterback, which is Hurts, because obviously we know if Hurts would have played, the outcome most definitely probably would have been a little different. Now, where I do give them some credit in terms of the Commanders, and that's something to kind of build off of going forward. So The thing was that the Commanders have struggled this year against teams, playoff teams. 5 of their losses this year have come to the first time they played the Eagles, the Steelers, the Ravens, the Bucks, and the Cowboys. And I'm pretty sure at the time they lost to the Cowboys wasn't where they're at now in terms of their season. I'm pretty sure at that time they still were a team who could potentially be in a hunt. You know what I mean? But at this point, that's probably over with. But obviously based off the NFC South that the Buccaneers are still in. But you look at the Ravens, the Steelers, and even the Eagles. These are 2 prime teams that's set to go into the playoffs with a pretty good amount of momentum and pretty high expectations. So regardless if they beat the starting quarterback or not, that's still enough for them to build off of. So I just wanted to kind of come in here and just chime in briefly on that. Like I said, I could dive into it a little deeply, and I might do eventually. But I kind of just want to give you guys a little bit, or give my take on what I seen. And like I say, man, if it was something I missed, man, make sure you feel free, man. Smash that. If you enjoyed this video, for one, smash that thumbs up. But if it was something I missed, or you want to elaborate off something I said, man, just drop down to the comments, man, and let me know, man. I'd be looking forward to that, because y'all help me out. Because it might be things that I might have missed and bypassed that you put me on game about, and I go back and look, and that makes me a much better, commentator, analyst going forward. So I'm all for that, But like I said just a few minutes ago, if you guys did enjoy this video, man, do me a big favor, man. Smash that thumbs up button. Also, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. And when you subscribe, click that post notification bell. That way you be notified on all things Rob Sports Center, man. Because I got to get back to dropping on a day-to-day basis, and you don't want to miss that. So stay tuned, and I'll see y'all in the next video. I'm out this thing. Peace.